newsletters. Really good. I actually was having a hard time deciding what Kriya to do. And then I saw you have a Kriya and a meditation. So guess what? That's what I'm doing tomorrow. So,
Yeah, I try to put one in every time.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's it's gonna be key for a lot this summer because people have been used to going so fast. They don't know their own pacing. They don't know that they're burning out their kidneys and adrenal glands because they, and so when you slow down, it doesn't feel like a normal pace. It feels like something's wrong. It feels like, oh my God, someone's put me in reverse, or, someone's put me in neutral, just rubbing the engine,
Yeah.
and so people have a very difficult time slowing their breath down, slowing their bodies down, because they're just been keeping up with the times. They don't realize that that's not their pace. And so when it comes down to slowing down, so they don't realize that they've been pushing themselves like an Energizer bunny, which is dead now. The Energizer bunny keeping up with the times right now, I mean, forget it. It's like, so people are going to need those kinds of kriyas over the summer
Yeah.
and going forward to basically restore their adrenal glands and prevent them from having more serious conditions, that become more medical related, because when you get messed with the kidneys and adrenals, that's like, those are your energy packs. Those are your power packs, right? And so, and then you add to it, if they're not staying hydrated, either through their drinking, hydrated water, non-sugar kind, or drinking water, pure water, or they're doing some kind of, cellular nutrition like IVs or vitamin injections, or like the vitamin patches, right, that you can put on the skin, to help nurture the body, to help get it to restore. But like I said, most people, right, um, everybody's been trying to go to speed at well, what the generators go, like, generators just hum at a higher frequency because that's what they're here for. They represent that life force, and they're humming at that pace, but they're here to respond. But that energy, when someone else who's not a generator, when someone else is around it, it's going to plug into them. And it's like, oh, now I have this boost. That's why, you know what I mean? People feel like they have this boost and all of a sudden they can do all these things. They think it's them. They don't realize they're borrowing the energy, and therefore then they don't know why they're so fatigued when come later in the day or another time.
So like human design, like a manifestor too, like a manifestor projector, a reflector can plug into the generator too.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you mean that we don't plug in, like a projector plugs in. They are designed to plug in with the way their auric field works. But with the other types, like even the manifestors, they in themselves are an energy type, technically speaking, but they don't have that same kind of energy as a generator, a manifesting generator. And so you're kind of like, it's kind of like if you're sitting at a stoplight and you're driving a car, like you're driving a modern car where you can't even hear the engine, right? It's quiet. You're at the stoplight just sitting there, and it's on if you're sitting in it, right? But then you have a muscle car that comes drive next to you, and
Yeah.
you can hear it, like, and you can even feel the vibration of it, right? All right. Well, for those non-energy types, or even for a manifestor type, it's like that's what it feels like to be around a generator, right? And so all of a sudden you're kind of like, you're kind of like, you're kind of like, oh, you got this energy, right? Right, it's like, and then all of a sudden it's like, it seems like you can do your paperwork faster, your chores faster, or think faster, and then it's like you know, then there's in some way, shape, or form, you kind of end up putting your foot to the, pedal to the metal, if you will, just because, there's that life force energy that is in all generators. And that, while it is going at a different pace for each generator, their auric field is so massive compared to any other type. And then you have this natural energy in that sacral center, and there's a there's a natural velocity and frequency to it, and even a sound to it. They're here, I mean, literally they're here to not necessarily relax, but yes, relax and respond, because the world, literally, I mean, this is projectors and generators, manifesting generators, this is their world now. Manifestor world, I mean, we're here, we do what we do, but manifestors, they're from a different time, and so there's less of us, whereas reflectors, it's like they're it's not their time either, but there's less of them, and it's kind of like they're more of a future type of a design. But but see, when you split me, like if I'm like right now I'm talking to you, so the manifestor in me can come out, but also the projector side of me. When I'm by myself and nobody else is here, no other living being, and I'm not online, interacting with my animals, or anybody else, well, then I'm literally sitting here in my design side as a reflector. Because my design side is a reflector. My personality side is a projector. They don't talk a lot about this, which, scientifically speaking, this is, kind of understanding how these operate. Because the manifestor side of me actually doesn't come out until I'm actually interacting with someone. That might be interacting in an email, they might be interacting online or in person. But once that comes together, because then I'm operating from that point, because I'm connected. Whereas when I'm by myself, it's like until I have, it doesn't mean I can't do anything, but I'm living more so. Just like when I'm sleeping, I'm a reflector as well. And so many people actually are. They go to a reflector state. Not, I don't think you do. I think you are still a generator when you're sleeping. But
What does the reflector do? Like, I mean, besides what the obvious word means, like, what do you?
well, reflectors, their auric field, they're samplers. They're samplers of the environment, and then
Oh,
they speak from that environment. Okay, so if I was speaking, so if I'm in my environment here, so see, right, so kind of like, I mean, in a way, I'm kind of a part-time reflector, it's like, but a reflector, which means a reflector from both sides, living, and both their personality and design come together, and they're a reflector. They're sampling the collective, they're sampling everything, and then typically what they bring forth in what they do or what they say is all coming from their sampling. They're basically picking up a sample of wherever their sphere is, wherever they have been, whatever they're interacting with. And so it's why it's important to pay attention to, well, those that are living as self, because they're a barometer. They really are. They can give you a glimpse of what's going on with this or that. It's kind of like walking into a boardroom with a bunch of people. They can be in there, and their auric field samples. That's what it does. So it's like it's sampling the whole thing, and then they can speak from what they experienced, that sampling, and that can be very useful when it comes to, well, all kinds of things, of getting a sense of the environment, the people, the decision making, the thinking, the health and well-being of those people. I mean, depending on what kinds of questions they're asked, because you got to inquire. They don't typically just speak out unless they're in a way invited, or unless they're, got something to share. And they do, but they live on the moon cycle too. That's how they make their decisions. So basically their decision making is based on the moon cycle. So a lot of times, it doesn't mean other people don't have to take a slow time to make decisions, but reflectors in their nature, their decision making comes by the cycle of the moon. So it can typically take them up to 28 days or more to make a decision about
That's their
something.
like natural
Yeah.
state.
Yeah, it's why it's so very important for them to know the moon, and the transit of the moon, particularly because that's the quickest way they're going to find their rhythm, and the quickest way that they're going to get to see when how their decision process is, because they're going to find out. It's like, oh, okay, because it's like they're not people who tend to make decisions in the moment, and they're tend to people you got to wait. But see, if they kind of understand their own pattern, then they'll have an understanding of, oh, right, let me just wait. And because typically I'll make decisions this, I can make decisions this, I'll wait and my 28 days. It's usually hard in the beginning for those that are new, but their processing is slower when it comes to decision making. But then once they get their pattern down with the moon, because even though they're reflectors, they're not all the same, right? They've got different hanging gates, right? Because it's like a reflector is basically, it's completely white, and you just see all these hanging gates in a human design chart. But all those gates, they are conditioners for others, and they're open to conditioning. But the greatest thing is that a reflector, because one of the key things is about when the field is white, and open or undefined, as we say, that's where our wisdom comes from. That's where our wisdom comes from. And so you look at a reflector, their wisdom is, their ability to grow, and wisdom, from all these different perspectives is available. Whereas like, you or I, wherever you see white on the chart or undefined, right? Those are our areas of where our wisdom's going to come from. Okay. So like the outsider looking in, and you take someone like myself, it's like there's 9 centers, right? But because I'm a triple split, I have 6 centers fixed. And a triple split will always have more centers fixed because they're a triple split. So that leaves me with, there's 3 centers where that I will become wise through. I have the potentiality of becoming wise through those centers. It doesn't mean I'm not wise for the centers and the lines and whatnot that I have, or channels that I have, naturally. But wisdom from an outsider speaking, um, and understanding, that's a deep wisdom that comes to that.
I always like when people ask me about human design, I don't know much, and I always say, you should have a reading with Sathari
Mhm.
because of your knowledge and your experience. And I was just reading through your newsletter, your current newsletter from for the summer, and there's there's a lot in there, and there was this section in there that it seems like you got a ton of offerings coming up, first of all, but one of them is the transits of your life.
Oh, mhm.
So that
That's a new
seems
one.
really cool. Like, can you explain like what? Because I think like human design is like this area where people think, oh, I'm a generator, I'm a manifester. At least people I talk to, and it's because I have basic knowledge of it. People just think that's it. Oh, I'm a generator, I'm a manifesting generator, I'm a projector, but like don't understand like the hanging gates like you talk about. And so when you have like these workshops, or when you have this, like what is that going to be like for people? Is it going to
Well, that's just, basically it's a snapshot of, looking at the transits and how they impact, and so when I say the transits, I'm looking at the planets, I'm looking at the human design gates associated with those planets at that particular time, and I'm looking at the planets from both the Western tropical side of astrology as well as the Vedic or Jyotish side in a synthesis. Okay, and then so that's kind of it's kind of a general overview of what's going on with those transits, and then people who are there, then we can look at how that transit is impacting them specifically as we look at their human design chart. Okay, so it's like if you came, then we'd have Julie's chart and what the current transit is for that particular week or day. We'd be looking at that and seeing how that's impacting you and what you might want to, think about or just simply notice. Because a transit is just that. You think of transit, it's moving through. It's not something that's static. It's not something that stays. It's moving. Just like the earth is constantly spinning, even as we speak, and things are constantly changing, right? Our breath is regulated, as we just simply talk or sit, right? It's constantly changing. So it's similar. It's like this is about where things are right now and how you're impacted, and then seeing how this is moving through you and not letting the mind grab it and own it as if it's yours, because it's not. It's
And that's what
passing
we
through.
do. I know I find myself doing that often where I think something in myself has just suddenly changed and that's the way it's going to be for like the rest of my life. And then it turns out like a couple days or whatever it is, there's another shift.
Right.
And that learning about that is like that's so valuable because I think we get stuck in our mind, obviously. I mean, there's so much that just takes over if we let it. And
Oh
then
yeah,
we're
because
trapped.
it can push on these emotional buttons, it can push on these decision buttons, it can make you feel like you're going faster than you normally go, it can make you bring up memories from the past that you haven't even thought about, and then your mind starts linking to this and linking to this, and oh, it must be about that, and if someone's crying and all of a sudden it's like they feel this overwhelm, oh, it must be about this and must be this, oh gosh, and it's like, and then next thing you know, you'll see people making decisions based on that or making doctor's appointments based on that, and it's this is why we have to wait and watch. We have to really get good at waiting and watching and observing, because it is a movie, and it's not that we can't take advantage of the transits, but we can't take advantage of it until we understand how it's impacting us, and then how we can differentiate between, you know how we can make use of it, leverage it, or just watch it pass through and allow the mind just to be the observer. And that's one of the hardest things. That's why, I bridge a lot of yoga with
Yeah.
it, because it's like, tuning into your breath, tuning into our center, and so to speak, disengaging from the mind, um, understanding it's still there, it's operating. The mind doesn't turn off. I mean, even when we think it's turned off, it's not turned off. They're supercomputers. So being able to allow the mind, or put the mind in a balcony, where, and you can even think of it as it's like, you've got it strapped down with tape, and I mean, you can't move, you can't speak, you can watch, that's all I'm allowing you to do, type of a thing. But it takes a lot for people to learn how to do that. And it takes a process of allowing yourself to gradually get into that. And it's just, and people who learn about their type in human design, if they start to understand strategy and authority, that's a route to take. but it takes a deconditioning process. It really does. It's not like, oh, you know, someone's a manifester and then boom. I mean, if they're a kid, okay. If they're a kid that's under 11 years old, right. All right. Chances are, hopefully they're still living as themselves. It all depends on how much what's happened to them in that first 7 years. But if they're an adult and they find out their type, then they have to learn and understand that there's a deconditioning process, because they got so many layers, so many nuances of conditioning of that has impacted them, from how they were raised to the environment they were raised in, to the collective, to the teachers they had, to the different things that happened to them in their life, the different things they did in their life, the different choices they made, all of those things, and there's a lot of things that we have to peel away that we kind of already know that really wasn't ours in the first place. But there's a lot of stuff that we have accepted and not realized it was conditioning.
Yeah.
Right. And that's been, and those are nuggets. It's kind of like, I was just talking to my friend. He's a generator, and he drives from Arizona to California to go work out with this specific teacher in this gym. And I'm like, can't you do that online? No, man, I don't like that. And I'm like, okay, but what about this day and age we're living in? He says, and of course, he's got a foul mouth. And so he's like, F that. And he says, no, I need to be in person. Now he knows his strategy and authority. He's been living it for a long time. He's gone through massive deconditioning for many, many years, and he's very clear. He's like, no, he says, that's not for me. It's like, and he says, so I do what I do. I want to be in person. I need to, drive down there, fly down there. And I don't care if it costs me extra money. It's like, I don't get any benefit out of doing this particular activity online. And for me, this was the first time I actually had anybody that put words to it this way, because he's very clear about his decision. He's very clear of what he needs for himself. And, and someone like me could be like, come on, dude, like, just do it online. I mean, right. You're whatnot. And so it actually then, so that causes me to broaden how I see things when I see and hear and learn about someone living as self, and why and how they make their decisions.
Yeah,
because it's like there's certain judgments I have, like, of how and when you speak up, your proper cues, when you're around an office or something, and how you're supposed to act. And well, that's not necessarily true. Someone might be there to yell and scream, but from a societal standpoint, we've deemed that is incorrect. We've deemed that as wrong. So therefore, there's a judgment that that kind of behavior is not appropriate. Right?
Right.
But then if you open up wider to where, if everybody's acting as themselves, and you save the finger pointing, put it on the back burner, and you just kind of open and watch. And it's kind of like, well, who made the rules now, right? Of like, oh, this is how you act in a library. This is how you act in these different places.
Right.
But we've been trained.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's not that it's wrong to have collective rules or societal rules. The tribe has made these rules in order for us to get along, in order for us to, have structures, in order for have a society that where we can reasonably move amongst each other and, have a relatively decent life. So there's these rules that were made. But the thing is that it's one thing to be aware of the rule and honor that rule. It's a different story, though, when you recognize it's just a rule and we've allowed it to become a conditioning. So therefore, everything else is wrong. It's kind of, this is why it's important to, someone like myself who's got the beautiful channel of judgment, to withhold judgment, and watch and see, because there's a place for everybody here. That doesn't mean it's supposed to be, that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be peaceful. It just means you're going to figure out who you're here for and who you're not. And you may not want to be around this or that person, but that might simply because the sound current isn't matching with your rhythm at that point. It's
Could it
not
be the
that,
transits impacting that?
of course,
Right.
but or it's the environment. It's like you take someone like myself, I'm a low sound person. So a low sound, for me, and certain sounds, I'm very, very sensitive to. And so I may not have any problem with what's going on if they're making commotion and even if it gets high pitched, but it's not an environment I can stay in. But it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean I don't like that group, or I don't like that person. I'm leaving to take care of myself because the sound is taking me to a place that I'm not supposed to be in my nervous system, and just in an environment that
Now, how did you, that's you living as yourself,
that's
right?
right. Yeah.
So how did you I figure deconditioning, maybe Kundalini yoga. What else did you do to decondition? Was it something
Well,
that,
with Kundalini yoga, I had to again, it was the practices. I was gravitated to the mantras. I've been gravitated to spiritual practice for a long time because I like that rhythm. I like that beat. I like the lower sound versus the higher pitches. And so listening to mantras, practicing mantras, you listen to my voice. My voice is not a high pitched one. And so, I suppose if I scream, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's got a deeper base to it. And so I actually resonate with my own sound. So when I hear myself chanting mantras, for example, it's like I'm comfortable with that. But understanding, like, I'm someone who has to control the climate. I have to have 100% control of my climate. Well, one of the ways I can do that is through Kundalini yoga, because I can use different yogic techniques to heat or cool the system down, whether it's a breathing technique or it's a kriya or meditation, to cool things down, so that it makes it so that I can pretty much be just about anywhere, because then you just become more yogic and neutral. But when you have the ability to control your own temperature in most cases, then you can pretty much almost go anywhere, right? But I still, I have complete 100% control of the temperature in my own house or my car. But that's me, you know? So I'm sensitive that way. Not everybody is sensitive with regards to climate in that way. Those are things I had to decondition. I had to decondition of like understanding of like my sensitive nervous system. I had to learn, even with Kundalini yoga, I had to learn that, well, what practices are a benefit for me. So that's why, like, when I work with individuals, for coaching sessions, for example, I'll give them a kriya and meditation that's based on their actual design, not just one, that I pull out of the hat because they happen to be dealing with stress, or because they happen to, be dealing with anger, for example. I look at their design to see what is going to be harmonious with them, and at the same time help them elevate and develop a caliber of fitness, physically, mentally, or emotionally, depending on what we're going for. So, you know, um, it's an art,
Yeah.
but it's like, it's an art that our own unique being is about learning to honor that. That's the key, because it's kind of like you and me, right? You and I do not by any means walk in the same rhythm. And we don't, you think of, what you see through your own eyes and what you're attracted to visually, and it's different, right? Here, I mean, we can even talk about the difference between me attracted to modern textiles and you are more attracted to, I don't know, vintage or older, right? It's like, and we can easily say, oh, well, that's just what Julie likes. That's just what Swaaha or Huddy likes. Well, no, actually, my environment attracts me to that. My human design environment is what is actually attracting to me that. Now, I didn't know that. Not until I got into human design. I was like, oh, right. I'm naturally attracted to that. My design actually, I'm attracted to those kind of modern sounds and textiles that you might find in a modern coffee shop, for example, new buildings, right?
Yep.
I go into an antique shop, I'm like automatically, or I see an older place, I'm not necessarily judging, but I used to judge. Why? Because it's like automatically I could pick up the scent because I got a scent like a dog's. I can pick up the scent, and I was just like, automatically my body is revolting.
Yeah.
And I'd see these things, and you go in these antique shops, and I'm kind of like, I'm like having to kind of breathe through it, walk through it. And trust me, because of the family I was raised in, I've been in all of that stuff for a very long time. And I used to think, well, I'm just different than the rest of my family. I'm just this, whatever. No, it turns out actually that, you know, that it's actually just what it doesn't fit with my environment. It doesn't mean I can't go into it, but it's like, it means that, it's not going to resonate with me for me to spend time there,
Yeah.
for any length of time. And it's like, so therefore I find someone else to go with my daughter to those things because she's going to have a much more fun time
Yeah. Yeah.
than with me. And that's no skin off my nose, because it doesn't matter. I mean, she's happy, and whoever she's going with are happy too to go through that, because that's where they enjoy. I can let go and recognize, oh, I don't need to do this. you know there's nothing wrong with me. This is just not what I'm comfortable with. But I used to think in my mind that I had to adapt. I used to have to adapt to all kinds of things, and I had to learn the hard way that I'm not here to adapt to everything just because I can.
You're reminding me of boundaries and like the importance of boundaries and just like pivoting a little bit. Is that the time we're in now too, is making sure that we have specific boundaries for ourselves, like um where we're feeling expended, our adrenal systems are going, we're constantly on the go. How important are boundaries right now for, I mean, I feel like I'm saying no, and I'm like, oh, thank God I have some sort of will to do it, because I was always a yes, I'll go with the flow. I'll go to 15 events this week and see how I feel after. And I just don't have the energy for it now. So
Right. I love those. What was it, these times where it's like, oh yes, what is it, the counselor sometimes like, yeah, just try saying yes to things. Just try to say yes to everything. And then, or the other side, just try saying no to everything. And it's like, no, this is not how you go about learning to set boundaries. But yes, this is a key time to learn to set boundaries. You have to really start setting boundaries. We all do have to set boundaries around what is really true for us.
Right.
and not um getting caught up in, you know, being able to see someone else's truth is one thing, but that doesn't mean that it resonates with us. And so just because we can see it, we can honor that, but we don't have to buy into it. And so setting boundaries, and that is just noticing of how much are we offering ourselves, you know, versus staying inward. How many times in these days, right? Because everybody's carrying a phone around. Just because the phone rings doesn't mean you're there to pick it up. Just because you get a text doesn't mean you have to respond at that moment. But we've trained ourselves to be living like that. And there's a lot of stress in that because, I mean, you know, I grew up with the friggin' landline with the dial phones. Okay. So, but we have to kind of think back to those times, and maybe the younger generation can't do that because they weren't around at that time. But it's, we have to understand what our own pacing is. And this is how we can begin to set boundaries. It's like, you know, it's one thing if our mind says, oh, yeah, I want to go out and see that movie. But if our body actually doesn't want to go, we've got to understand that because the mind can want one thing, so many things, zillions of things at once. But that doesn't mean our actual physical vessel or form wants to go and do that. And most of us have not learned how to listen to our form. We've been trained and taught to ignore it. I mean, it's like, you know, if someone's sick, a lot of, I mean, nowadays you see more of it. People will stay home. But in a lot of cases, people are still like they're feeling unwell and they're still making themselves go and do this, that, or the other, versus recognizing that um, they need to be brave. Because I tell people that they got to be brave because it's really hard for a lot of people to say they're unwell.
Yeah, it is.
I can't, you know, back, you know, skipping out on work or skipping out on school because and making up a story that you don't feel good, right? That used to be the thing.
Yep.
But a lot of times people just feel because that they are made to feel less than, that they're wrong, um, that they're not, you know, they're expecting more out of themselves. And so if they can't rise to the occasion, then they think that that means something's wrong with them, or because they think that they have an expectation that they can do it.
Yeah.
And they've made a commitment to do it. And because they've made a commitment, then they force themselves to do it.
Yep.
And
That's
this is
my
why we got to be more choiceful with our commitments.
right. Right.
Because and that I mean, and that's what I mean by it's a really an act of bravery for people to be able to speak up for themselves, of being able to say, you know, I made that commitment. I know I made that commitment, but unfortunately, I'm not able to follow through.
Yeah.
And that can make them feel guilty, even ashamed, um, insecure, a whole plethora of things. But if they don't start being honest with themselves, then who are they here? Who are they living for?
Right. Who
I
are
mean,
we?
honestly,
Not ourselves.
you know, who are they living for? Because it's like most people can't even look at their face in the mirror and say, I love you.
Yeah.
The, you know, or it's people are just ready to avoid at all costs. It's a hard thing to face themselves. It's a hard thing to own up to. I made a mistake. You know, I thought I'd feel better, but I don't feel good enough to go yet. And there's that fine line where a lot of time it's like, emotionally speaking, it's like, you know, I feel so fatigued. I don't want to do anything.
Right.
But in their mind feels perfectly great. And their
Always.
mind can make them feel like, oh, yeah, you know, of course, you know, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can take that meeting, you know, I can work on that project. I can, you know, stay an extra hour.
Yeah.
Most people don't know what fatigue looks like in themselves anymore. Not
Or
unless
it's
they've
really
keeled
like,
over.
what's that?
Not unless they've keeled over.
Yeah, and that's where like for me, I my goal is to nip it in the bud before it I fall over, because I've lived a lot of my life where I just push it because I've been taught to force myself, and then I'll force myself crash. And my goal with yoga is really to know to know when my system needs me, and I'm really trying to make an effort now to honor and tell my body that I love my body, and things like that, because I think it helps tune in to the body awareness, which I have not always had, and I'm just developing, frankly, even with
Yeah,
yoga.
it's that somatic awareness
Yeah.
of the body. And because we've been looking to other things to solve that. It's like if we were loved appropriately, then, we'd feel that cozy feeling and we'd feel like we're being taken care of. But even that isn't taking care of our vessel, our form.
Right.
And you know, if we keep going, trying to keep up with, it's one thing to keep up with the frequency and the vibration, but you have to have a nervous system to be able to handle the frequency and the vibrations of where they are and where they're going. And most people don't have a nervous system that's attuned that way. A lot of people are looking at it, through brute force. Let me just go work out. Let me just do some aerobics activity. Let me do these other types of exercises that is going to make me feel inspired, or it's going to trigger the neurotransmitters in the brain of the feel good hormones to feel better. But, and that's not that those are bad, but if the nervous system isn't attuned, then it doesn't matter how physically fit the physical form is. It doesn't matter how big your muscles are. It doesn't matter the strength that you have in your legs. Okay. If your nervous system isn't attuned, then moving through your day, dealing with fatigue, dealing with the changing times, it's going to be really difficult because it's not about, so to speak, brute force.
Right.
And so that's why, um, other forms of yoga are there, but Kundalini yoga is one in which it focuses on the nervous system. It focuses on the lymphatic system and tuning that up in such a way that you're able to handle the energy and the frequency that's moving through you without it keeling you over, without you falling backwards or not knowing how to handle the emotions that are moving through you, or the commotion.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Did you have to go at 4? Or no?
I got a few more minutes.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. Did that
Um,
answer your question though?
yeah, it did.
But boundaries are key.
Boundaries are key.
And so, and I mean, it, I guess I'll say, like, this whole thing of being eloquent or graceful, we all want to do things eloquently and graceful. But the truth of the matter is when we're learning how to do something, it might be tripping over our words. It might not come out as graceful as we like, but that shouldn't stop us from setting those boundaries, from because we got to usually, so to speak, practice getting our voice out there, um, making those moves, regardless if it seems like it's going to come out imperfect. Um, waiting until you have the perfect words, waiting until the perfect time, you have to wait until you're clear. But even if you're clear, that doesn't mean it's going to come out perfectly. And granted, you can use Chat GPT, if you need some help with your wording. But doing it as conscious as possible is going to be helpful,
Yeah.
right? Because that's you can be firm, but being mean or rude, it's you got to understand that sometimes it's going to come off that way, but you have to also look at if you're doing what you're doing and if it's what you need to be doing.
Right.
And sometimes it's going to come out. I mean, it's just like, you know some days you're like, in a bra that fits real great, and other days someone's not washed their clothes,
Yeah.
right? And they're wearing a bathing suit for a bra, right? It's like, we're not we have to get out of the habit that we're some like perfectly make-upped um uh you know walking out of our house or doing what we do for life. you know we have to start to be honest with our A and B side, if you will. It's, we can be a yogic person, we can have conscious communication, we can have a conscious lifestyle. Does that mean our house isn't messy? Does that mean we don't sometimes speed in our car? Does that mean we don't, spill our coffee? You know what I mean? It's like not everything is mm, as manicured as we, think it should be.
Well, on that subject, also in your newsletter and in conscious communication, which is the course I just took with you and lived
Oh,
with,
right.
um, it was about breaking the mask, and that's what you speak of in your newsletter about how masks they need to be broken, and this is what it's reminding me of with when we are working hard to manicure ourselves and present a certain way that's wearing a mask, right? I mean, not to say okay, wear makeup, but like to be sort of obsessed with how we look. I mean,
Right?
we can't really live like this anymore, can we?
No.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's like if you're adorning yourself because it feels good and you enjoy doing it, you want to go get your nails because you feel in the mood to get them done and you really like the whole process or you like having it done and you're not doing it for anyone or anything else, then do it. You want to put makeup on because you enjoy how the brushes feel on your face as you're putting your makeup on, or you love decking yourself out or putting the earrings on or doing your hair in a certain way or wearing certain clothes, fine, but it's like, notice how your body feels. Notice if this is what resonates, or maybe you're wearing shorts and sweats and no makeup and it's, I mean, what to do? You got to allow yourself to be yourself. And regardless if, and if you're judging yourself, like if someone's judging themselves, like, oh, you take my mom, she's a perfect example. She knows I talk about her like this all the time, but it's like, it's like she will only go out in a certain way
Yeah.
because she feels like a slob if she doesn't. And there's nothing to break her from it. It's like, this is her behavior. This is how she deems it's appropriate, but it is in her design this way. She can't get away from it, even if she wanted to, even if you tried to train her to. It's not her way. Her behavior is everything. She's designed this way. And so, does she differentiate that? Not necessarily. It's not like she has an intimate knowledge of her design in that way. But
Yeah.
but because of I'm like, oh, there's nothing changed. This is why she's, but see, then she tries to apply it to others. Oh, you can't go out like that. You're
That's my favorite.
mismatched. You're mismatched. You can't walk out of the house like that. Well, no. And it was like a revolt constantly,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, how can you possibly go out like that? You know, she always thought I was a beautiful person. But by goodness, it's like, if I'm not out in public and I'm got, a green top and black pants, this is all wrong, you know, right? And it's like, have one earring in and one earring out. And it's like, you're not balanced. You know what I mean? She's got this order and she's got this planning and she's got this, for her, behavior is the deepest conditioner. And this is how you do. This is how you eat. I married a husband who's an Indian, right? He eats his food like typical Indian style with his hands. All his food is eaten with his hands, whatever he's eating, right? And it's like, and for her, it's like, what? Were you raised in the jungle? You know what I mean? It's like, this is right. And it's like, if she's, I'm like, this is, you're not going to change this. This is his culture. This is how he eats. And, but it's never going to stop disgusting her. She can be in a restaurant full of everybody eating that same way because they were in an Indian restaurant, but her, she can't, no, it's just, no, it's wrong. It's inappropriate. Right. So, and that's her strong judgment and that's her strong behavior, but it's actually in her design that way. For me, this is what allowed me to let loose of my foul thought process towards her and how she talked about things.
Because you realized it was her design.
I did.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what am I mean, because it's kind of like I'm sitting here judging her doing all this and making assumptions that, she knew better, she could do better, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, this is her. This isn't because of her age. This isn't because of the day and age she grew up in. It's, this is her. Right. And it's like, and if she didn't do that, then, and she's a projector. And it's interesting because when she's with the right generators, the right manifesting generators, I mean, there's a whole load of them. They need that. And it helps them get, I watch it just like between their auric fields. Works, just works. And I mean, like she's here for people. She's here for certain people, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like we're all here for different people. We're not here for everybody, right? And that's another thing, right? This whole thing of like, let's serve the world. I need to be of service to everybody and everyone on the planet. Well, not necessarily.
That's the hardest thing for me to one of the hard things for me is to realize that not everyone's for me. And I think I'm going to struggle with it continuously because I want to serve everyone and I want to have, people like me and all that. And it just,
well, that starts to change though. As soon as you start to, I shouldn't say as soon, but I mean, you've been working on it for a long time. It's like if you looked at yourself now,
yeah,
compared to even 2 or 3 years ago, how much more do you appreciate and honor and love yourself
yeah,
than you did back then?
right.
And see yourself in a new light now, right?
Yeah,
It's like you can see that you're growing in, so to speak, into yourself, right? And you're, while it may seem like a slow process, it's like you're recognizing your beauty, you're recognizing your gifts, and it's like you're never going to stop caring, it's not, and it's not about stopping caring. It's just recognizing where your boundaries are and who you're here to serve versus who you're here. Maybe you're going to delegate serving, right? Maybe someone else is going to be there for that person.
right.
And you happen to have the connection because you're like, figuring Miss Social who knows so many people, and you have, what I mean? There's going to be, I feel like you're just going to have a natural ability to serve, but you're going to serve through delegating, as
Yeah.
well as then being able to serve those ones you're actually here for. And vice versa, those that are, you're here for and that are here for you. Otherwise you're gonna, I mean, it's kind of like, right, it's like let's just let's take a pin now and just pop the balloon, or tear down the sails, right? Because it's like if you want to be there and available for everybody,
There's no boundaries.
No,
And there's no self.
right. And the thing is, you are actually here for a lot of people, far more than me. And so it's kind of like, just take it one step at a time and recognize who's here for you and vice versa. And don't worry about, and just trust you're going to get who you're here for.
Right.
Because then you're going to have the energy for them. You're not expending the energy to those that don't need you. It's not that they, it's like, doesn't mean you're not going to delegate, or it doesn't mean you're not going to say, hey, I know who's, whatever, let me give you a resource. Okay.
Right. Right.
But you don't want to exhaust yourself on everybody when you're only here for certain people.
True.
And you're here for a massive amount of people compared to me. I'm not here for anywhere near the kind of massive people that you're here for in this very personal way. That's not, I'm like, I'm like one at a time, once in a while I'm on a stage in front of hundreds or thousands of people once in a while, but it's like, I'm not here for every one of those people in the audience.
Right.
Whereas someone like you, if you're on stage, well, you might very well be, everybody in that audience is, or a majority of the people in that audience are going to be wanting you specifically. Right. So, but it's not going to stop you from caring, but you want your energy to go where it's supposed to go, right?
Yep.
You don't want to waste it.
No, I'm finding what happens when I waste it and how I feel. And
right.
Evident lately.
Yeah. You hear the sucking sound, right?
Yes.
It's like,
yeah.
It's like, oh, right. I don't have energy to do anything anymore. Right.
Yep.
Someone sucked it all.
Yep.
And there's no reciprocal action. I like the Northern Lights behind you, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Someday I'm going to see those.
Well, and we can hook you up with Prabhu. He'll show you.
I'd love to go there.
Anytime.
Yeah.
He's a tour guide, so he knows it all. We'll schedule a thing. We'll go to Iceland and.
Yeah, let's go. And it's some summer. I don't know when.
Right. Well, it's good in the fall.
Oh, the fall.
Usually around September, October is when you can see them. The best.
How's traveling this September, October? Not great, is it?
End of September.
Yep.
Yeah. September is it's a challenging month.
Yeah.
We have a lot of challenging months. June is kind of like, we've got some good times in June, but July, August, August is like, maybe between the 24th and September 5th, there's that window. That's good. Otherwise, wait till the last weekend of September.
Okay.
Yeah.
These dogs are getting in a fight underneath my feet.
Oh, I can't see them.
I don't know. I don't think you'll be able to see them because I get the thing on, but yeah, they're
they need to go out.
Yeah, they need to do something.
We'll go take them out.
Yeah, I'll go take them out.
All right.
You want to talk later, or we're good for today?
I don't know. I can ping you when I'm, done. Yeah.
All right. You want to ping me and we'll get on again?
Sure.
All right.
Good to see you. What's up now?